you so much for having us. And I'm really excited to kind of share this technology with you all. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm putting this into presentation mode and it doesn't want to go. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so my name is Dora, and yes, I was part of the last cohort, and it was very exciting to go through the whole program, and we actually got our campuses through this program too. So we learned with the students and with Lisa and Chess and their help. We actually had the fun and privilege of also being audited, so it was a great experience. But anyways, so I wanted to share about Project Glow and Grow, and Damon Hebert, who is the director of the Ag Research Program over at Ubiquity, UBQD, will be joining me as well in the presentation to kind of just share with you what our project is about. So how did this all start? Well, we're part of an innovation cohort. We're partners with Elemental Accelerator. And every year they have this thing called Deal Day. And so it's kind of like Shark Tank, you know? So Damon and I had to go in and give them a pitch and say, why is this important for Hawaii to be able to bring this technology and bring some of the benefits to the way we're growing here in Hawaii. So I hope you guys will also see some of the value that we saw and what we're trying to do with this project. So we had a little bit of seed money, we're jumpstarting it, and we're getting some of our farmer growers to pilot this in Hawaii. So before you guys pilot, I don't mean pilot like polo grassroots R&D. It's just bringing something that's already being done elsewhere, and it's just new to Hawaii. Anyway, so I wanted to ask this question: what does ag and quantum dots have in common? Okay, and if your answer is they both tune light photoluminescence to create amazing products, you're right, because that's exactly what we're going to be able to talk about today. And we all know about photosynthesis and the importance of it, but what is this whole thing about light? And a lot of grow houses and ability to grow requires a spectrum of light. And so we're going to touch a little bit about photoluminescence, and Damon will actually show that, a visual presentation of what that means to your plant. We see different styles of growing. And we have vertical houses, greenhouses, horizontal growing, in soil, and soilless. So this is all different things that are coming and available here in our landscape. But it all costs the food, the nutrients, the lighting, all costs a lot of energy, because growing here in Hawaii, it's just higher cost of everything. So what we were thinking was that we have this amazing light energy coming from the sun. How do we better harness it and use that natural sunlight to enhance our growing? And it's a passive way of, channeling all of that light energy without having to do the different, you see green light, red light, blue light, all sorts of things. People are trying different things, and they all enhances the light in different ways. Well, it's all for photosynthesis. So how do we then channel it to optimize the production, the yield? And Damon's team came up with this. So what we did is, you can see the deployment right now, these films right now at the Kunia project site. Now this is an open greenhouse, so we had to kind of rig a way to be able to put these in and install it. But in a more of a structured greenhouse, there's usually some rafters that they can hang things on, and Damon will have some other visuals of a different farm here also on Maui that he'll share. So how does the technology work? Well, this is on their website. So when I was doing the research for this initially, I thought, okay, we need something passive. We need something easy. We cannot do all sorts of expensive things to hook things up. And basically, we have the opportunity right now through this project to test the production and side-by-side comparison of what this photoluminescence, which is essentially converts the spectrums of light into this optimal growing spectrum, the warm reds, the orange spectrum, to enhance photosynthesis and increase yields. The quantum dots, it looks like a film, but there's actually small, tiny nanoparticles, 10 to the minus 10th, tiny structures. And based on the size, you can change the light spectrum. But in this one, they found that this spectrum, this warm orange red glow, is the best for the yield of the plants. So we went off on March 7th, 2022. There's Damon in his hat and his punch, what's that called? The
grommet machine.
Grommet machine,
Mhm.
punching. And so basically we were able to install this at the Kuniya site at the Kohana Runs site. So I actually, if anybody ever wants a tour, Jason Brand has offered his site to be the site for a tour. So maybe that could be a field trip for the Group Gap team sometime in the future. But anyways, the lighting does make a difference. And so you can kind of see here, this is a chart just showing the wavelength of light and what range is optimal really for enhanced growing. So basically it was tuned for that. And we're doing a live test. We're doing this project right now is to assess the yield, improved photosynthesis and growing efficiencies of the site. We're also looking at how much fruiting, flowering, color, taste. These are all, it's going to be in yield, right? Amount of production per harvest. And then we're going to look at maybe some of the observational color differences. He had some color variations under the shade house versus, or under the greenhouse versus under full light spectrum. So we're going to be able to learn a lot about that. This is truly learning and growing because we've also been able to connect this with a learning greenhouse that we're going to be hopefully pretty soon putting up at Kamehameha campus or at another farm site, hopefully for students to be able to gain that experience. We've already named this Hale Hale Hanai Ola, and that really means about caring. And so this greenhouse would be about caring not only for our health, caring for the land, but also being able to be caring for the way that we connect technology within the way we grow. So it's really kind of creating that learning and leading experience. So now I'm going to turn it over to Damon and how he's talking about how this light is helping him with the full beard. I'm just kidding. So, but he's going to share some of the new, the recent results, preliminary results, and just kind of talk a little bit about it so that we can have further discussions in Q&A.
Thanks a lot, Dora. Next slide. That's too big of a picture. Well, I just want to say up front, it's been a real pleasure to work with the Kamehameha schools and Kuniya Farms. It took a little while to get going, but it was really great to get out there last month and do the actual install and meet the grower in person. So this is kind of our plan. He's got a couple different bays highlighted in the bottom left there from the Google Maps image. And what we want to do with all of our trials is set up a side-by-side that you can compare one side to the other. And we want to split the areas. We want to split them east-west, not north-south, because of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, the southern exposure has additional sunlight. We want them to be as close as possible in intensity as we can. So I believe this pilot is about our 35th with the company, but the first pilot on the islands. So we're really excited to be launching this. So the idea here was to grow the same plants on one side of the trial as on the other and keep everything the same, nutrients, airflow, you name it, everything the same other than the spectral quality or the color of the sunlight that hits the plants. And so one thing I wanted to do was highlight what our technology actually does with light. Dora hit in on a little bit, but specifically what it does is converts some of the UV and blue light into orange and red light. And just the basis of that is that orange and red light are the most efficient colors for photosynthesis. If you look at something called the action spectrum, also known as the McCree curve, it's something that's been in horticulture for over 40 years. And it just shows the different photosynthetic efficiency of colors of light. So we've known about this. And the key is, what can we do with sunlight to take advantage of that fact? And one of the reasons we know about this even more in the last 5 to 10 years is the LED studies. We're learning a lot about light colors through LED studies and how they affect plant growth and morphology. So this is sort of the idea here for the trial. We personally installed 3,200 square feet of the luminescent film. We have more film on site that'll be installed in the next Cunha Country Farms expansion, which I think is going up in Waimea, I believe. We'll see. I guess it's still up in the air. But so for the, do you guys get an idea of like what the cost is for this kind of a project if you were a commercial farmer? So that's around a little under 7,000 square feet. The total film cost would be about $20,000. There's installation, labor, and hardware costs there too, but that's pretty minimal. Dora can attest, the three of us put up the films in one day. A little bit of prep work done by me, but more or less, 3 people one day to put up 3,000 square feet. Not too bad.
If the film could help me grow about a foot, I could have helped with a lot more.
Well, your help was essential, so thanks. You can go to the next slide. This is our plan of action before we actually got there. This is just a PowerPoint sketch. So now you'll see what it actually looks like in practice. So go ahead forward. I guess we'll talk about spectra first. So one thing we did, and we always do at our pilots, is we have a handheld spectrometer. And what we like to do is understand what the spectral difference is between the quality of light underneath the orange glow and not underneath the orange glow. So probably the most impactful plot here, there's a lot here, but on the bottom left here, what you can see is the direct sunlight in gray. And then you can see the quality of the spectrum underneath the greenhouse cover itself is in blue. And then underneath the luminescent film is in orange there. So you can see that there's more orange light right about 600 nanometers. If you go to the bottom one there, Dora, right around 600, you can see that difference between the orange and blue spectrum. That's the boost. It doesn't look like a lot on this kind of a spectrum, this kind of a plot. So what we do is we take the difference of the orange and blue spectrum. And on the right, you can kind of see that. So you can see the boost in red. It also pushes it out into the infrared. So we actually get a little bit extra infrared here too. And then anything that's below 0 on that bottom right plot is where we're absorbing light. So we're taking out light, taking out about 60% of blue light at 400 nanometers, and it scales down. At 500 nanometers, we're taking only about 10% of that light out. You can go to the next one. I like to show this one because it shows on the bottom right, again, you can see the percentage difference from the control light. So you can see we've got around about a 7 or 8% boost at 600 nanometers. And we've got a reduction of about 35% in the blue and the UV portion of the spectrum. So that's just an idea of what this product will do with light. To take a step back, the underlying technology here, they're called quantum dots. What they do, they're tiny nanoparticles of semiconductor. And what they do very well is manipulate colors of light. You may have heard of quantum dots used in display technologies. Samsung makes the QLED television. There's over 10 million quantum dot televisions sold each year. That number keeps going up because they are the most pure colors. They make the best colors for display tech. But our company is doing something totally different with quantum dots. The quantum dots used in display tech have cadmium and lead in them, obviously toxic metals. Our company uses non-toxic materials like copper and sulfur to make our quantum dots. And that's the reason we're able to commercialize them into large area applications, such as agriculture. And if you look at our company as well, we also do solar windows. So those are transparent windows that generate electricity. And again, that's a large area application. We would not want to put toxic materials into the waste stream. So the key before we could even develop these was to develop a non-toxic quantum dots. I think we can go beyond the spectra here. It's a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to highlight this other project we have going on in Maui. I was there in March. I got a chance to go over to Maui for 2 days. These guys are growing hot peppers and tomatoes underneath the orange glow. They've outfitted their entire greenhouse. And their feedback has been outstanding. Some of the benefits have, of course, been increased production. That's the whole idea here, is to give better photosynthetic rates to your plants. So increased production, but also very consistent production. So every harvest in all parts of the year is very consistent now, rather than being like a lot lower in the winter, higher in the summer, very consistent. And then additionally, it's reduced the temperature inside of its greenhouse quite a bit. It's not something we necessarily engineered this film to do, to control temperature, but it's been kind of a side effect that's been beneficial, especially in really hot places. We're in New Mexico. We've got a lot of altitude and sunlight here. And we've found the best benefits kind of as a trend over our 30+ trials has been in sunny and or high altitude climates that have a lot of UV light to harvest and to move from UV over into red and orange. So Hawaii has always been a really great market for our technology. Another factor is the cost of produce, power, and water. Any place where those are high makes the economic benefit for a yield boost even more impactful. You can imagine, you know, maybe a place like, say, Kentucky, which doesn't have so much such high produce prices or high costs of inputs, might have less impact than a place like Hawaii or California, or we've got a lot of interest from the Middle East, from Asia. So anyways, I wanted to just kind of highlight the economics. We get a lot of questions about the economics. Of course, this is a non-electric passive way to modify the spectrum in your greenhouse. You could, of course, put LEDs up or traditional lighting. That's very expensive in terms of capital expenditure and operational expense. But the idea behind our technology is really to optimize this one free resource that all growers have, that's sunlight. A lot of people think that, well, plants evolved under sunlight, natural sunlight, so natural sunlight must be the optimal spectrum. Well, actually, it's not. Most plants need around 10 to 12% blue light, and sunlight actually contains 30% blue light. So there's a lot of extra blue light that we can harvest by transforming it into other colors and further optimizing it. I mean, as humans, we've been kind of tricking Mother Nature, you know, for eons, and this is just another sort of trick we can play on Mother Nature and optimize things. So if you want to know about pricing for our product, it's kind of the retail number is $3 a square foot. Usually we can get that price down for growers who want to do larger areas. And then, you know, how does it impact the farm? Well, the yield boost is really the bottom line. For most of our pilot partners, they've seen anywhere from a 5 to 20% yield boost underneath the orange glow. That also can be in terms of faster cycle time. It's another way to measure it. And this yield boost translates to more revenue for the farmer in the same amount of time. And of course, that extra revenue can then pay for the technology. So payback time is typically a year or two for high value veggies. These are veggies like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, strawberries, lettuce. Those are the main five. But there's also other kind of, I would say, vegetables that aren't as common, but that are also high value. A lot of people bring up things like saffron or vanilla beans, things like that. Not as big volume, but certainly high value. And then the product lifetime is 4 to 6 years in the greenhouse. So the idea is there to pay back that technology in 1 or 2 years, and then realize those additional profits and revenues for the rest of the lifetime of the film. And then Dora asked me to highlight our pilot program. That's pretty much my main responsibility at the company, is to manage the pilot program. Like I said, these are side-by-side trials. We're interested in all greenhouse crops that growers grow in mass inside of greenhouses. Sometimes we're lucky enough to get third-party funding for our pilots, the Cunha Farms trial being one of them. But more commonly, our pilot program involves large discounts given to growers who agree to share the data with us and set up a side-by-side trial with good data tracking and data and statistical analysis afterwards. We don't usually publish the the commercial trials in peer-reviewed journals, but we have worked with University of Arizona, Arizona State University, Texas A&M University, Colorado State, to do peer-reviewed studies, usually a smaller scale than the commercial trials. And then those we do publish. So if anyone's interested in some of our published peer-reviewed papers, I'd be happy to share those. So yeah, that's our pilot program. And there's my contact info if anybody has any questions or would like some additional resources. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, so anyone who has additional questions or would maybe be interested in a pilot program or maybe just using it, part of the reason we're doing it, I'm in the strategy and transformation group at KS. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is to bring these technologies that, like Damon said, is that it complements our growing needs out here. So energy is such a high cost concern. And if the light can be optimized to actually just, 20 to 25%, what does that translate to? One of the folks that we're working with, if it even gives them 1 or 2 days per crop, harvest, that's like an extra set of crops going in. So I was like, wow, that's quite a bit. So it's just how it's framed and how it links in with the growing styles of the different farms. I think we're interested in, and there's floriculture. So we're interested, I think, Damon, you're talking about looking at maybe flowers that could be maybe enhanced and grown.
Yeah, that metric would be cycle time. How fast can the commercial grower get those flowers out of the greenhouse into the nursery or into the retail store and get that turnaround time faster? So more cycles per year is really the metric.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. So hopefully everybody, and I will send the slide deck out so that Lisa can forward it out to folks. But if there's any questions for Damon, no, okay, for any of us, then let us know. And we really do hope that we'll be able to get that student growing, greenhouse up and running too. And will probably be a good place for people to kind of see hands-on different things, because not all growers want people milling around their farms and stuff. So for gap reasons.
That is awesome. Wow. That's fascinating. And I'm so intrigued by the increase in consistency, because that's something that when we've talked to buyers always comes up as a challenge with small growers particularly, but across Hawaii it's always an issue that consistency is really difficult to achieve. So that's a big one, aside from the increased yield. I want to make sure everybody, if you guys have questions, take the time. We have some minutes here. So if there's anything you want to ask specifically while these guys are here, please feel free.
So for your guys' pilot program, is that something you're is that program have a certain amount of time, like an end date that you're just experimenting with, or is it something you're currently taking applications for, or interested parties kind of thing?
Yeah, so I've got about 5 slots left for this year. And the usual trial time is 1 calendar year. So as soon as we install, we'll kind of start that clock and expect to get updates for 1 year. But then beyond that year, then there's no obligation for the grower to share anything further if they don't want to. The product would be theirs to use as they see fit. But yeah, I do have some slots available. And so I'm constantly taking applications, or if people just want to set up a meeting with me, that's typically how we get things rolling.
What are the qualifications you generally look for a good applicant?
Impact, meaning how large is the farm? Do they have a good reputation? Will they be somebody that will share with their friends and neighbors to proliferate the technology in Hawaii so that we can have a bigger impact on more than just one farm, right? And then we like to work with growers who have some experience doing trials. It's not required, but we prefer there's some experience, or at least a data-minded or scientifically minded grower. We've worked with some that weren't so great. In fact, I had one grower whose dog literally ate his data because he was writing it down in a notebook. And, so not everyone's necessarily using spreadsheets, but we prefer to work with data savvy folks.
Can even use
Understood.
Heavy Connect to log some of that data. Yeah.
That'd be cool. Well, thanks for your answer. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, good questions. Thanks.
Kind of efficiency of light transfer is there, like how much quenching and how much shading is this providing?
Yeah, great question. So there is some loss. Of course, you couldn't send light through any layer with zero loss. So there's about a 14% loss in intensity of PAR light. So that's photosynthetically active radiation. If you consider some of the infrared out to 750, there's more of a 9% loss, something like that. But the quality of light makes up for the loss in quantity. And there's a lot of folks that we're sort of breaking the barrier with their common sense there, especially folks in low light environments like Canada, the Netherlands. They've been trained that 1% loss of intensity is 1% loss in yield. But that's if you treat every photon the same. The truth is that red photons are worth more than blue photons on a one-to-one basis. And so we're sort of making up for the loss in intensity by the gain in quality or color.
Do you notice any difference in morphogenesis? Because blue light does play a part in photomorphogenesis.
Yeah, you're right. So if you have too much blue light, you'll have very compact plants. If you have too much red light, you'll have stretchy, lanky, weak plants. And so we're trying to change the balance of red to blue, but we would never want to remove all of the blue light. In fact, our technology only removes 25% of blue light. We're leaving 75% of the blue light intact. And so, right, it's a great question. I guess for certain cultivars, for some herbs, they've gotten a little bit too stretchy for our growers' tastes. That's some feedback, but for the most part, the effect isn't too bad on the morphology. And in fact, typically faster growth rates mean better light capture. So you'll have more leaves, you're growing faster, and you're just doing a better job of absorbing the light that is available. So usually it's a good thing, but I'm not going to say in all cases it's a good thing.
I think for the lettuce folks, they said that the intensity reduction actually has helped too with the burn on the lettuce leaves if the is just out in the open. So that's another.
Yeah, like
depends on the crop, right?
If you compare tomatoes to lettuce, tomatoes need about twice the light intensity as lettuce. So growers of lettuce tend to be able to handle that 14% loss in PAR much easier.
What we also noticed is a lot of the grow houses, the structure itself, it's not really transparent, right? So it's translucent, but it could be just dirty as well, covered. So that actually reduces some of the intensity naturally, and it doesn't even account for this, shift in taking some of the unused blue light and shifting it, converting it into that growing spectrum. It's a trade-off. Yeah, so that's why we're wanting to do these pilots and see what makes sense for certain growers. And here in Hawaii, at least, to just harness the natural sunlight, because going all indoors could be very expensive for Hawaii, because then you got to moderate the temperature, the air conditioning, the air environment. And I just recently visited one of these large scale warehouse greenhouses, and just the amount of electricity it uses, to me, it's a nice way of growing, because now you're in air conditioning, but it's also very, very expensive. And so I don't know if that's the best way for us to shift as well. So this was kind of like a happy medium with a passive technology, but it makes these enhancements. So we're really wanting our students too to become more knowledgeable about the morphology. Like Carrie, you're saying, is these are all the things that we need to kind of get our kids to be much more savvy about, and then the next generation of growers as well to be part of that pipeline for the workforce.
Is the application limited to greenhouses, or can it be done on a row cover or smaller scale?
So right now our technology is a retrofit, meaning goes underneath the existing cover. It's not really rated to be the exterior cover of a greenhouse, so it wouldn't work for row covers, for example. And you do have to have enough strength in your infrastructure to hold the weight. It's about 0.4 kilograms per square meter. It's rather dense. It's about twice the thickness of a traditional plastic cover. But we are working on cover materials that'll be lighter and will be used as the exterior cover. So that's our kind of our next thing. We're working with some really big plastics manufacturers, because really our company is a small startup in Los Alamos, New Mexico. We make quantum dots. We don't make large plastic rolls necessarily. So that's not our expertise, but that will be next. Great question.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. I feel like I learned a lot just in about 20 minutes. And I'm excited to share this out. That we do have another grower who was very interested, wasn't able to make it today because of another grant he's working on, but we're going to share this with him. So I'm guessing you may hear from some of these folks, but thank you so much. And hopefully you guys take advantage of Dora mentioning that, you know, the current pilot in Cunha is open to showing you around. I would go if I was there on Oahu, but you guys are. So if you can get a chance to hook up with her, and we'll send all this out afterwards so that you guys have all the information.
Yeah, definitely let me know, and then we'll coordinate something with everyone. So,
Perfect.
thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to take a quick moment to transition into our class. So those of you who have already been through this can go ahead and go. Cohort 6 folks, we're going to move into talking about ag water. So thank you again, Damon and Dora and everybody else who joined. Carrie, good to see you. And we'll catch up with you guys again soon. Aloha.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, I'm going to go back to my class presentation, and Chess and I are going to move into talking about ag water today. How exciting. This is